Welcome to Galactic Atlas Lore. If you enjoy these tales, please like and subscribe. If you have any recommendations you would like me to explore, please leave a comment. Let's begin. Black Sun Crime Syndicate, Shadows of Galactic Power. Chapter 1. The Birth of Shadows. In the final, flickering twilight of the Old Republic, as the Senate grew bloated with bureaucracy and the Jedi Order turned increasingly inward, a different kind of power began to rise, not one of laws or lightsabers, but one forged in silence, secrecy, and blood. The galactic Underworld, long dismissed as the realm of petty smugglers and spice runners, had begun to evolve into something far more formidable. At its heart, within the chaos that followed the collapse of ancient Sith regimes and the splintering of political alliances, a shadow organization took shape, Black Sun. The seeds of Black Sun were sown not in the great halls of Coruscant, but in the forgotten margins of galactic civilization. In the void left by collapsing Sith warlord factions, pirate coalitions, and fractured trade guilds, enterprising beings seized opportunity. The Outer Rim territories, long neglected by the core worlds, became a haven for illicit deals and silent empires. On Folian, an aristocratic species known for their calculating diplomacy and cultural rigidity, crime began wearing the mask of honor. On Mustafar, amidst the volcanic forges and droid foundries, arms dealers began shipping weapon caches under false imperial banners. And in the lower levels of Coruscant, where light seldom reached, spice flowed like water, and death was sold by the hour. Though Black Sun would later be recognized as one of the most structured criminal syndicates in galactic history, its origins were far from organized. In the early decades of its gestation, there existed a loose confederation of criminal clans, Phalian nobles with off-world holdings, rogue mercenary companies, disgraced banking families from Moorlands, and ex-Separatist financiers looking for new markets. Each operated independently, but all shared a common philosophy: profit over principle, order through fear, and the belief that the cracks in galactic governance could be prized wider with the right leverage. Among the first true architects of what would become Black Sun was a Faulian patriarch named Darnak Voru, a former diplomat who lost his family seat during a trade scandal involving illicit Rylothian slaves. Forced into exile, Voru used his knowledge of diplomatic corridors and political weaknesses to establish a new kind of network. He didn't rely on brute force. Instead, he weaponized information, blackmailing senators, manipulating shipping lanes, and funding guerrilla groups to create destabilization where it benefited him. Voru's organization soon absorbed smaller cells on Corellia and Bothawi, setting the blueprint for what would follow. A syndicate built not merely on muscle, but on manipulation. Voru's approach found favor among others who sought more than credits. They craved permanence. From the smog-choked scrap fields of Ord Mantell came Raig Mardu, a Nikto arms dealer with a private army of exiled bounty hunters and repurposed battle droids. He struck deals with hidden Separatist weapons caches, moving outdated but deadly tech to warlords on the frontier. Then there was Zangzar Drev, a Deveronian financier who used shell corporations and corrupt banks to funnel trillions of credits through dummy accounts, effectively creating the first shadow bank for the galaxy's criminal elite. By the time these factions began recognizing each other's utility, the Old Republic was already in terminal decline. Political infighting paralyzed the Senate. Jedi efforts to patrol the Outer Rim had been reduced to scattered peacekeeping missions. Trade disputes between sectors went unresolved for years. Into this vacuum of justice and governance, the founding members of Black Sun quietly reached out to one another. They began holding clandestine gatherings, first on remote moons, then aboard shielded freighters drifting in deep space, and finally in secret chambers hidden beneath the ruins of ancient Sith outposts. Out of these secretive summits came the first unifying doctrine, a charter that emphasized decentralized power, resource pooling, and mutual non-aggression. No single leader would rule Black Sun. Instead, a council of 9 individuals, known as the Vigos, would oversee operations across sectors. The name Vigo, derived from an obscure Faline dialect meaning voice, emphasized the dual nature of their power. They were both representative and supreme within their domains. The 9 Vigos each controlled specific territories and operations. One might oversee the spice trade flowing from Kessel and Ryloth, while another managed the black market shipyards around Sluis Van. Others specialized in identity forgery, sentient trafficking, assassination networks, or the lucrative trade in stolen technology. While each Vigo acted autonomously within their portfolio, major decisions, such as eliminating a rival syndicate or funding a coup, required consensus or at least a majority agreement. This structure allowed Black Sun to remain nimble, resistant to infiltration, and devastatingly effective. Despite their differences, the Vigos shared several key philosophies. The first was discretion. Unlike the Hutts, who flaunted their criminality with decadent bravado, Black Sun thrived in the shadows. Its front companies appeared respectable. Its enforcers were often clad in official uniforms or diplomatic robes. Its operations moved through the same starports and hyperspace lanes as legitimate galactic commerce. To the public, and even many governments, Black Sun didn't exist. It was simply a conspiracy theory whispered in cantinas and spice dens. The second tenet was adaptability. Black Sun did not bind itself to a single ideology, species, or planet. It welcomed talent from across the galaxy, provided they brought results. This pragmatic inclusiveness allowed it to grow in ways that other syndicates, bound by tradition or racial hierarchies, could not. Faline nobles worked alongside Trandoshan slavers, Celestan slicers, and former Republic officers turned mercenary captains. As Black Sun grew, its influence began subtly reshaping galactic politics. Corrupt senators in the Mid-Rim began passing trade exceptions and customs waivers that benefited shell companies tied to the Syndicate. Planetary governors, once resistant to criminal elements, found themselves beholden to debts, blackmail, or threats to their families. Even Jedi efforts to investigate whispers of the Syndicate were thwarted by false leads, fabricated evidence, and occasionally ambushes resulting in mysterious disappearances. One of the earliest indications of Black Sun's arrival as a serious galactic force came during the Dravian Exchange collapse, a complex economic incident in which multiple Outer Rim banking systems failed overnight, triggering a panic that toppled governments on 3 worlds. Subsequent investigation revealed a carefully orchestrated sabotage involving forged financial data, planted rumors, and timed disruptions in HoloNet communications. While no official blame was assigned, the collapse enabled Black Sun to purchase key infrastructure at fire sale prices, consolidating power while appearing absent. Black Sun's growing reach also attracted the attention of rival groups. The Pike Syndicate, with its control over spice refining and distribution, began to lose control over its trade corridors. The Hutt cartel, long dominant in the Mid-Rim, suddenly found its territory infested with well-financed Black Sun operatives who offered better deals and more security to smugglers. Tensions escalated into targeted assassinations, destroyed convoys, and poisoned negotiation. Yet Black Sun survived each confrontation, often emerging stronger. They were not interested in open war. They thrived in manipulation, turning rivals against each other, funding insurgencies, and using their network of spies and slicers to erode trust among enemies. By the final decade of the Old Republic, Black Sun was no longer just a criminal syndicate, it was a shadow empire. Its reach extended into both legitimate and illicit commerce. Its operatives moved freely through spaceports, military supply chains, and diplomatic corridors. Its name was never spoken openly, yet it was known by every serious power broker from the core to wild space. The Jedi suspected its existence but could never trace its leadership. The Senate, blinded by internal corruption, failed to grasp the extent of its infiltration. And at the center of this vast and growing power was a throne with 9 shadows. Vigos who never appeared together in public, who used masks and proxies, who ruled not with crowns but with leverage, fear, and the art of silence. The rise of Black Sun was not the product of a single war or ruler. It was the slow, deliberate accumulation of power by those who understood the truth of the galaxy, that in the void between empires and ideals, there would always be those who thrived in the darkness. The old Republic would fall soon, and the Jedi would be hunted. But Black Sun had already laid its foundation deep beneath the rotting roots of the Republic. When the galaxy began to burn, the Syndicate would not falter. It would profit. And in the shadows, it would rule. Chapter 2. Rise through corruption. As the Clone Wars erupted across the galaxy, entire star systems burned in the crossfire between the Galactic Republic and the Confederacy of Independent Systems. While armies clashed and ideologies fractured, a quieter war unfolded beneath the surface. This war was not fought with droids or clones, but with credits, whispers, and the slow, calculated corruption of power. Amid the turmoil, the Black Sun crime syndicate emerged not as a mere survivor of galactic chaos, but as one of its most proficient architects. War, to Black Sun, was not a calamity. It was opportunity. The Clone Wars marked a period of unparalleled expansion for Black Sun. With planetary governments collapsing and Republic forces overstretched, the Syndicate moved quickly to embed itself within both sides of the conflict. Republic senators, desperate for resources to maintain control over their sectors, turned to unregulated funding sources. Many never asked where the shipments came from or who profited. Black Sun did not need to bribe everyone. A few influential players, compromised early and rewarded lavishly, were enough to open doors that should have remained sealed. Bribery during the Clone Wars took on sophisticated forms. No longer were credits exchanged in dark alleys. Instead, entire government programs were funded through shell corporations tied to Black Sun. Emergency medical aid packages were funneled through fake humanitarian fronts that delivered low-quality supplies at inflated prices. Senators with deep ties to struggling outer rim worlds accepted contracts with companies that appeared legitimate but were merely fronts masking Black Sun's operations. Political donations masked as economic development programs created a feedback loop of dependence. Once the trap was set, few dared to pull away. Prince Xizor of Forlín emerged during this period as a transformative figure within the Syndicate. A high-born aristocrat with a razor-sharp intellect and a taste for control, Xizor combined his species' natural grace and pheromonal persuasion with a meticulous understanding of galactic economics. He did not rise through bloodshed, but through boardrooms. His corporate empire, Xizor Transport Systems, became the face of Black Sun's public legitimacy. On paper, it was a high-performing logistics company that secured military and industrial contracts from both the Republic and independent planetary governments. In reality, it was a conduit through which spice, arms, slaves, and forbidden technologies were moved with impunity. Xizor's genius lay in his ability to blur the line between criminal enterprise and corporate legitimacy. Spice shipments from Kessel and Ryloth were rebranded as pharmaceutical research compounds. Military-grade weapons moved across borders with falsified manifests labeling them as farming equipment or mining tools. When audits occurred, well-compensated bureaucrats and data slicers ensured all the correct codes appeared on the right screens. To the galaxy at large, Xizor Transport Systems was a model of interstellar efficiency. To those who knew better, it was the blood vessel of a syndicate growing more powerful with each passing battle. Black Sun's operations during the Clone Wars expanded into nearly every profitable corner of the galaxy. Arms trafficking reached new heights as outdated Separatist droid parts were scavenged, refurbished, and sold to warlords in lawless systems. Republic military surplus found its way onto the black market through falsified records and forged requisitions. Former Trade Federation convoys, abandoned in contested systems, were stripped for parts and resold under new transponder codes. The war ensured that every weapon had a buyer, and Black Sun ensured there was never a shortage of supply. Spice smuggling also reached its zenith, with HoloNet communication frequently disrupted and Republic enforcement diverted to military campaigns, the Syndicate established new routes through regions previously considered too dangerous or tightly monitored. Entire asteroid belts were converted into mobile refining platforms. Fragments of comets were hollowed out to create temporary smuggling depots. Refined glitterstim, rill, and other high-demand narcotics flowed through these arteries to the core worlds, where elite buyers paid premiums to escape the despair of wartime life. Black Sun smugglers adopted cloaking technologies, sensor-scrambling devices, and falsified Republic tags to avoid detection. When caught, few were prosecuted thanks to a growing network of compromised officials and bribed sector judges. But it was the slave trade that revealed the Syndicate's most ruthless instincts. In the chaos of war, entire populations were displaced. Refugees fled bombardments and invasions only to be intercepted by mercenary vessels posing as relief ships. Children were separated from families and sold into labor camps on industrial worlds. Twi'leks, Zabraks, and humans alike were auctioned in remote shadow ports controlled by Black Sun. Using the same channels that delivered Republic goods, the Syndicate moved its most horrific cargo with horrifying efficiency. Slave markets, once associated with the Hutt cartel, now bore the unmistakable signature of Black Sun branding: silent, clinical, and profitable. Even within the Syndicate, this expansion did not come without friction. The Vigo Council, which had maintained a loose but cooperative structure, began to experience fractures. With the war allowing for unprecedented profits, competition between Vigos intensified. Some used their newfound wealth to expand influence over neutral sectors, while others sought to unseat rivals or absorb their territories. A series of mysterious assassinations began thinning the ranks. Ships exploded in docking bays, safe houses were breached without alarms, enforcers defected or vanished without trace. One particularly violent episode, later referred to in whispers as the Taris Purge, saw 3 Vigos eliminated in the span of a week. The resulting power vacuum nearly shattered the council. It was during this moment of instability that Prince Xizor made his most daring move. Leveraging his influence over logistics, bribery networks, and financial accounts, he proposed centralizing certain operations under his personal oversight. For stability, he claimed. Several Vigos, fearing further bloodshed and convinced of his corporate efficiency, agreed. Others did not. Those who opposed Xizor's growing power suffered rapid misfortunes. Assets were seized through fabricated Republic investigations. Family members were arrested, their crimes mysteriously discovered by bounty hunters with perfect intelligence. Within months, Xizor had emerged as the most powerful Vigo, holding sway over multiple sectors and controlling the flow of resources vital to the others' survival. Though the Council still existed, its independence had eroded. Black Sun, once a syndicate of equals, now operated under the invisible but ironclad grip of a single, calculating mind. Through this consolidation, Black Sun's integration with legitimate galactic commerce became complete. Merchant guilds signed shipping agreements with Xizor transport systems. Planetary governments accepted trade deals that lowered import taxes in exchange for infrastructure investment. Investments paid for by laundered credits from slave labor and illegal spice sales. Medical facilities unknowingly purchased supplies grown on worlds stripped bare by Black Sun's enforcers. Even HoloNet news agencies, hungry for content, signed distribution contracts with media fronts funded by the Syndicate, allowing Black Sun to influence public perception and manipulate market trends. Xizor's brilliance was in keeping the Syndicate one step ahead of both war and scrutiny. When Republic forces targeted pirate bases, Black Sun operatives had already evacuated, leaving only fabricated evidence pointing to rivals. When Separatist fleets encroached on vital trade lanes, the Syndicate bribed their commanders to divert course or mysteriously encountered mechanical failures. Where most criminal organizations sought to merely survive the war, Black Sun thrived within it, using the instability as both shield and sword. In the final years of the Clone Wars, Black Sun had grown into an entity so entangled with the galactic economy that its removal would have destabilized entire sectors. It had agents embedded in planetary governments, informants within Republic military fleets, and slicers monitoring Jedi communications. It controlled the flow of weapons, spice, people, and information. It had become the nervous system of the galactic underworld. When the Republic fell and the Empire rose, many criminal empires were dismantled or driven into hiding. But Black Sun had already adapted, already entrenched. Prince Xizor, ever calculating, watched from his palace on Coruscant, cloaked in opulence and secrecy, knowing that a new era of profit was on the horizon. For the Black Sun, the war had not been a storm to endure, it had been a ladder to climb, and from the top of that ladder they could see the galaxy aflame, and knew it had all gone exactly as planned. Chapter 3. Shadows in the Clone Wars. As the Clone Wars thundered across the stars, the galactic underworld took on a new, more dangerous shape. The Black Sun Syndicate, already deeply embedded within the fabric of commerce and corruption, found itself both hunted and needed. While the Republic intensified its campaigns against criminal elements perceived to be destabilizing the war effort, it also found itself reliant on the very infrastructure Black Sun controlled. Logistics, intelligence, and raw materials flowed through channels too dark for official eyes, and in those shadows, Black Sun flourished. Black Sun's ability to survive during this period came not from raw firepower alone, but from a network so tangled that rooting it out became nearly impossible. The Republic issued warrants, dispatched Jedi, and commissioned special task forces to crack down on spice traffickers, slavers, and illegal arms dealers, but every time an operation neared success, the trail went cold. Informants vanished, evidence was corrupted, targets moved only hours before raids. In many cases, it became clear that Black Sun had infiltrated not just local authorities, but entire Republic military outposts. Senators, assigned to oversee these campaigns, often stalled investigations, citing bureaucratic concerns or shifting political priorities. In truth, they had already been bored. Despite this invisible armor, Black Sun was not invulnerable. Jedi-led operations posed the greatest threat to their secrecy. Masters such as Quinlan Vos, Plo Koon, and Ayla Secura began unraveling parts of the Syndicate's network in sectors like Daro and Eriadu. These Jedi, unlike their political counterparts, could not be bribed or threatened. Their investigations pushed deeper, disrupting shipments and uncovering slaver rings. In response, Black Sun deployed not only enforcers, but disinformation campaigns. Holonet footage was altered to depict Jedi operations as aggressive and harmful to local populations. Entire villages were paid to stage protests or falsely testify against Republic intervention. Even the Jedi Council began questioning the sustainability of their missions when the hearts and minds of the public seemed to turn against them. In some cases, Black Sun opted for a more direct solution. Jedi were ambushed, often with intelligence provided by their own corrupted clones, or Republic officers. Speeder bombs, poisoned cantina drinks, and hacked training droids all became tools in the Syndicate's arsenal. While the Jedi never publicly admitted the extent of their losses, archives later revealed dozens of Jedi Knights and Padawans who fell in operations against Black Sun-looked targets. These deaths were usually attributed to Separatist action, masking the role of criminal networks in orchestrating their downfall. During this chaotic period, Black Sun made the strategic decision to embrace alliances that it had previously avoided. Chief among these was the Pike Syndicate. The Pikes, known for their stranglehold on the spice mines of Kessel, had long operated independently, guarded by paranoia and chemical wealth, but the war made isolation dangerous. Blockades, pirate attacks, and disrupted shipments made even the Pikes vulnerable. Xizor's emissaries arrived with offers of protection, expanded distribution, and shared intelligence. In exchange, Black Sun demanded exclusive access to refined spice and favored pricing on high-grade shipments. The agreement was made in secret, sealed not with ink, but with mutual threats, and the quiet understanding that betrayal meant annihilation. Equally significant was Black Sun's interaction with the Hutt cartel. For centuries, the Hutts had ruled the Outer Rim under their own criminal monarchy, rarely tolerating competition. But the Clone Wars strained their dominion. Republic patrols disrupted key smuggling lanes, and the expansion of Separatist droid forces threatened unaligned systems. The Hutts, like the Pikes, found themselves pushed toward alliance. What began as limited cooperation evolved into a complex network of territory sharing, resource pooling, and joint operations. Ryloth, once firmly under Hutt control, became a testbed for this uneasy collaboration. Black Sun enforcers coordinated with Hutt slavers and Pike spice runners to control the planet's labor force and natural resources. The Republic's failure to secure Ryloth allowed the Syndicate to embed itself deeply, disguising its presence behind the ever-shifting front lines of war. However, no alliance reshaped Black Sun's trajectory more profoundly than the one formed with the Shadow Collective. When Darth Maul returned from Oblivion and began assembling a force of criminal syndicates under a singular vision of control, many scoffed. But Maul's power, backed by savage ruthlessness and uncanny foresight, made resistance costly. Black Sun initially resisted his overtures, seeing him as a rogue element likely to attract unwanted Jedi attention, but after the swift and bloody fall of rival syndicates who refused him, the Vigos began to reconsider. Maul's proposition was not submission, but unification. Black Sun would retain its internal structure, its profits, and its influence, but would contribute forces and resources to the broader vision of galactic dominance through criminal power. The turning point came on Mustafar, where a summit of reluctant Vigo leaders met with Maul and his Death Watch enforcers. What began as negotiation quickly shifted when Mao executed one of the Vigo representatives in full view of the others, sending a message sharper than any contract. The survivors agreed to the pact. Under the Shadow Collective, Black Sun found new opportunities and new dangers. Access to Death Watch military hardware and tactics gave the Syndicate's enforcers a deadly edge. Covert operations, once limited to sabotage and assassination, now included coordinated planetary takeovers. On Onderon, where the Republic and Separatists battled for influence through proxy wars, Black Sun operatives provided weapons and tactical advice to insurgent factions. These groups, unaware of their true benefactors, destabilized the region, ensuring a steady flow of displaced populations, ripe for exploitation. On Kessel, the Shadow Collective's influence allowed Black Sun to move past its reliance on Pike cooperation and establish its own refining stations. Clones and droids alike were corrupted or subverted to look the other way. Security became less about firepower and more about controlling the narrative. Entire sections of the Holonet were manipulated to present spice trade as a lesser concern compared to the broader galactic conflict. As Jedi attention shifted to larger threats, Black Sun's grip tightened. Yet with expansion came fragility. The Vigo Council, though nominally united under Xizor's rising dominance, faced increasing internal strain. Regional Vigos, flush with wealth and emboldened by their new powers, began operating with near-total autonomy. Some struck their own side deals with local warlords. Others began cultivating personal armies, separate from Black Sun's standard chain of command. Some of those began cultivating personal armies, separate from Black Sun's standard chain of command. The very structure that had once made the Syndicate resilient now threatened to splinter it. Nowhere was this tension more evident than in the war-torn systems of the expansion region. Vigos like Tav San and Lorakai Rin established semi-independent domains, complete with their own tax systems, port regulations, and branded currencies. Black Sun in these territories became less a shadow empire and more a visible governing body. This visibility drew increased Jedi attention. A failed operation on the planet Thustra revealed a secret Black Sun installation masquerading as a Republic-aligned logistics hub. Jedi Master Alis Secura led the raid, uncovering documents and cargo that directly tied the operation to multiple Republic senators. Though the installation was destroyed, the damage was done. Black Sun responded with a calculated purge of compromised assets and the rapid restructuring of front companies. But the illusion of perfect invisibility had been shattered. Despite the mounting risks, Black Sun pressed forward. The war had created a galaxy in flux, and in flux lay the seeds of transformation. The Syndicate no longer simply existed in the cracks between powers, it had become a power unto itself. Jedi raids continued but grew increasingly symbolic. Republic agents, exhausted and spread thin, often found themselves outmaneuvered by Syndicate operatives with superior local intelligence and deeper pockets. The once mythical Vigo Council was now spoken of openly in Underworld circles, each member a minor king or queen presiding over an empire of vice. But not all betrayals came from ambition. Some came from fear. As Maul's grip over the Shadow Collective tightened and his agenda grew darker, whispers of dissent rose among Black Sun's inner circles. Some feared that association with a former Sith would draw fatal attention when the war ended. Others resented the increasing militarization of their operations, which drained profits and invited greater scrutiny. A schism formed, with some Vigos quietly plotting withdrawal from the collective. What followed was a series of covert assassinations and internal sabotage efforts that further fractured the fragile trust between regions. By the time the war approached its final days, Black Sun had become a fractured titan. Its reach was vast, its influence undeniable, but its unity increasingly brittle. Prince Xizor, ever calculating, began planning contingencies. Rumors spread of hidden fleets, private armies loyal only to him, and plans to reposition the Syndicate to serve the interests of whoever won the war. For Black Sun, victory was never about flags or ideals. It was about staying indispensable to power, whichever form that power took. And so, as Jedi died and clones marched, as Sith Lords maneuvered behind Senate curtains, Black Sun waited. In the shadows of war, it had grown from a criminal network into a force capable of altering galactic outcomes. It did not seek recognition. It sought permanence. And in a galaxy drowning in chaos, permanence was the most dangerous power of all. Chapter 4. The Xizor Ascendancy. In the sprawling chaos of the galaxy, amidst the thrones of emperors and the chambers of Jedi temples, few names struck fear and reverence with equal weight as Prince Xizor. He was not a warlord, nor a Sith, nor a senator. He held no formal title within the Empire, yet entire sectors moved at his command, and whispers of his influence echoed from the core worlds to the depths of wild space. To understand the full scope of Black Sun's power during its golden era is to understand the man who forged its might in silence and shadow. Prince Xizor was not merely a crime lord, he was the embodiment of ambition sculpted into cold, calculating form. Born on the world of Falane, Xizor belonged to a species that valued perfection, control, and cultural superiority. The Falane, reptilian in physiology and aristocratic in bearing, possessed a unique evolutionary trait that few outside their species fully understood. Their bodies emitted powerful pheromones, capable of influencing the emotions and responses of most sentient beings. While not an absolute form of mind control, these pheromones could cloud judgment, dull resistance, and implant feelings of trust, admiration, or even desire. In the hands of most Falane, this was a passive feature, integrated into social rituals and diplomatic traditions. In Xizor's hands, it became a weapon. Xizor learned early in his life that power was less about domination and more about influence. He studied the subtleties of language, body posture, and chemical manipulation. Where others barked commands, he merely stepped into a room and watched it bend to his will. Through calculated alliances and ruthless maneuvering, he rose through the ranks of Falane nobility, acquiring off-world assets and political clout. But it was tragedy that would forge his path into the galaxy's criminal heart. When an Imperial bioweapons mishap devastated his home province, killing tens of thousands, including members of his family, Xizor vowed to never be powerless again. He turned his rage not into rebellion, but into strategy. He would not fight the Empire openly, he would rise until even the Emperor noticed. Xizor's consolidation of Black Sun began in the final years of the Clone Wars, as internal fractures among the Vigo Council made unity fragile. Using his unmatched ability to manipulate through both pheromones and political leverage, Xizor eliminated rivals without firing a shot. Meetings that began as discussions ended in subtle shifts of allegiance. Vigos who resisted his influence found their assets frozen, their enforcers bought, and their secrets exposed to enemies. Unnamed, those who submitted were granted autonomy in exchange for loyalty. Within a matter of years, the balance of power had shifted. The council still existed in name, but real authority rested with Xizor. He became the invisible crown atop Black Sun's criminal empire. His operations spanned every known vice in the galaxy. Spice flowed from Kessel under contracts legitimized through subsidiaries. Slave auctions on Zygeria listed their wares as labor logistics. Weapons depots buried beneath asteroid belts were maintained by droids, bearing the insignias of long-dead corporations. All of this was funneled through Xizor transport systems, a logistics empire that had, by the rise of the Empire, become one of the largest independent shipping firms in the galaxy. It maintained legal contracts with dozens of planetary governments, supplied both civilian and military operations, and donated generously to infrastructure and relief efforts. All of this made audits nearly impossible and gave Xizor an unassailable reputation as a businessman. But Xizor did not merely hide in plain sight. He flaunted his power in ways the Empire could not publicly challenge. His personal palace on Coruscant towered over entire districts, an obsidian fortress guarded by private security forces outfitted with the finest gear credits could buy. Inside, the palace was a marvel of engineering and decadence. Halls designed with acoustic illusions made whispers from one end carry clearly to the other. Defensive mechanisms, both physical and chemical, could incapacitate or kill entire strike teams. Surveillance was total, and at the heart of it all sat Xizor himself, attended by aides, slaves, informants and spies. His reputation as a seducer was well earned, and not merely due to his pheromones. Xizor cultivated a persona of refinement, intellect and taste. He hosted galas where imperial officers mingled unknowingly with syndicate lieutenants. He engaged in philosophical debates with senators while brokering arms deals in hidden rooms below their chambers. Every gesture was calculated. Every smile carried intent. Even his acts of charity were designed to create debt and obligation. No one left Xizor's presence unaffected. Some adored him, others feared him, all respected him. Despite his success, Xizor's ambition led him to play a dangerous game, one of proximity to the Galactic Empire. He saw in the Empire a structure that could either destroy him or validate his rise. Instead of confronting it, he embedded himself within its folds. Black Sun became a silent partner to many imperial initiatives. When the Empire needed illegal materials or deniable actions, it was Xizor's channels they used. When political figures needed removal without fingerprints, it was Xizor's assassins who acted. Over time, he began to believe that his influence had made him immune. It was a fatal miscalculation. Darth Vader, the Emperor's enforcer and second only to him in power, saw through the elegance and illusion. To Vader, Xizor was a threat not merely to galactic order, but to the Emperor's vision. More than once their paths crossed, always in shadows, always beneath veils of civility. Xizor took pleasure in needling Vader, spreading whispers that undermined his authority or highlighting failures in his campaigns. In turn, Vader made subtle efforts to disrupt Black Sun's operations, orchestrating raids through intermediaries, destroying shipments and eliminating allies. The rivalry between Xizor and Vader reached its zenith when the Faline Prince learned of the Dark Lord's role in the bioweapon disaster that had decimated his people. Xizor had long suspected that Vader, then newly forged from Anakin Skywalker's fall, had ordered the orbital bombardment that incinerated the plague. Though the action had been to contain the outbreak, the memory of that destruction festered in Xizor's mind. He wanted revenge, not through open war, but through slow, meticulous degradation. He plotted to discredit Vader in the eyes of the Emperor. He used the holonet to leak details of failed missions, manipulated the Senate to question Imperial tactics, and even targeted those close to Vader. It was this final act, targeting a young rebel connected to Skywalker, that triggered the fall of Prince Xizor. As detailed in the events surrounding Shadows of the Empire, Xizor orchestrated a campaign to eliminate Luke Skywalker, not merely to damage the rebellion, but to inflict personal pain on Vader. He believed that if he could kill the boy, Vader's emotional fracture would be exposed, weakening his position before the Emperor. The plan, however, failed. Not only did Skywalker survive, but the web of manipulations was uncovered. Darth Vader responded not with words, but with fire. The destruction of Xizor's palace on Coruscant was sudden and absolute. The Emperor looked the other way. No official record was kept, no charges were filed, but a starship descended from the sky, and when it departed, only ash and molten stone remained. Xizor, once the Shadow King of the Galactic Underworld, was gone. Whether he died in the explosion or escaped in some secret fashion remained a subject of rumor. Some claimed he fled to the unknown regions. Others whispered of clones or heirs hidden across the stars. But one truth was undeniable. His empire was shattered. In the wake of his fall, Black Sun splintered. The Vigo Council, long subjugated under his will, broke into factions. Regional leaders turned on each other. Profits dipped. Front companies were seized by the Empire or absorbed by rivals. The Syndicate, once unified by Xizor's presence, devolved into chaos. Though Black Sun would survive in various forms, it would never again reach the height of power it had known under Prince Xizor. And yet, his legacy endured. In the annals of crime, in whispered teachings among underworld apprentices, Xizor was a myth, a symbol of what cunning, control, and vision could achieve in a galaxy ruled by tyrants and haunted by war. He had dared to challenge not only the Jedi or the Republic, but the very structure of the Empire. He had come within arm's reach of influencing the fate of the galaxy. He was the prince who ruled without a throne, who commanded without an army, and who fell not because he lacked power, but because he dared to reach beyond it. In the end, Prince Xizor did not merely define an era of Black Sun, he became its face. And in the shadows of that legacy, others would try to rise. But none would ever match the precision, the elegance, or the danger of the one who ruled the underworld from the very heart of the Empire itself. Chapter 5. Empire and the Underground War. With the collapse of the Galactic Republic and the rise of the Empire, the galaxy was plunged into a new order of control. The Senate had become a shell. The Jedi were scattered or slain. Fear ruled, channeled through stormtroopers and star destroyers. But beneath the rigid structure of Palpatine's regime, a different war continued. In the alleys of Nar Shaddaa, in the darkened trade depots of the Outer Rim, and in the encrypted fragments of holonet transmissions, the Black Sun crime syndicate adapted. While the galaxy marched beneath banners of order, the syndicate moved in silence, redefining itself to survive and thrive in the age of tyranny. The initial years of the Empire's rule were among the most dangerous for criminal organizations. The new government was aggressive and efficient. The Empire sought not only to enforce law, but to eliminate all forms of decentralized power. Warlords, planetary militias, and syndicates were crushed without ceremony. Entire cartels vanished within days. Black Sun, already fractured after the fall of Xizor, faced extinction, but while others collapsed under the weight of imperial crackdowns, Black Sun changed its nature. It shed its visible leadership and decentralized even further, dispersing its operations into thousands of independent cells, linked by encrypted networks, silent couriers, and mutually assured destruction. The heart of this survival strategy lay in the construction of galactic shadow ports. Hidden across the Outer Rim, these ports operated entirely outside the purview of imperial star charts. Some were hollowed-out asteroids, shielded by ion storms and sensor jammers. Others were hidden inside the atmospheres of gas giants, where only specially modified freighters could dock. These ports became the arteries of Black Sun's empire, where spice, weapons, stolen artifacts, and even people were moved without interference. Each port was governed by a regional Vigo, who operated with near-total autonomy, but contributed a cut of profits to the central intelligence network that kept the syndicate connected. Smuggling routes were continuously evolving. Traditional hyperspace lanes were too heavily monitored. Instead, Black Sun hired navigators who had once served in Separatist navies and Republic exploration corps. These specialists mapped forgotten hyperlanes, some dating back to the High Republic, others newly calculated through unstable regions like the Arcanis sector or the Ghost Nebula. Using encrypted hyperspace buoys, Black Sun couriers could jump from system to system undetected. Transponder spoofing, signal bouncing, and data packet injection became standard tools for syndicate smugglers. In some cases, Black Sun vessels traveled under official Imperial codes, purchased from rogue technicians or stolen from destroyed convoys. But the syndicate's survival did not rest on stealth alone. It rested on corruption. The Empire, for all its rigid hierarchy and military might, was built on layers of bureaucracy. Beneath the grand proclamations of unity and strength, regional governors and moths ruled their territories with personal discretion. Many of these men and women, isolated from the core and desperate for control, were willing to look the other way for the right price. Black Sun approached them not as adversaries but as silent partners. Bribes came in the form of luxury goods, off-world vacations, and untraceable accounts in neutral systems. Some moths even received their positions thanks to syndicate manipulation, supported by evidence leaks and political framing of rivals. On planets like Salukami and Garel, entire customs departments were run by officials loyal to the syndicate. Containers marked as Imperial medical aid were repurposed to smuggle blasters and spice. Mining colonies in the expansion region received shipments of droids outfitted with slicing tools and encryption kits, all labeled as industrial repair units. In return, local governors received protection from insurgents, control over information flow, and a steady stream of revenue outside imperial taxation. The Empire, ironically, often depended on these arrangements to maintain peace in volatile systems. As long as Black Sun remained discreet, the mutual dependence persisted. Sleecers became the true backbone of this era. Black Sun invested heavily in acquiring the best cyber infiltrators in the galaxy. Former Republic intelligence agents, rogue AI developers, and prodigy slicers from den worlds like Edifor and Ord Cestus were recruited with promises of wealth, freedom, or sanctuary from Imperial law. These slicers operated from mobile platforms, never staying in one system longer than a week. Using advanced HoloNet intrusion tools, they tapped into Imperial communication networks, surveillance drones, and even supply chain databases. Through this access, Black Sun gained real-time knowledge of troop movements, customs inspections, and interdiction patrols. They intercepted orders before they were sent and altered them at the source. In one case, an entire fleet of TIE fighters was diverted to a decoy rendezvous point, allowing a Black Sun freighter to escape with 20 tons of coaxium fuel. On another occasion, the syndicate intercepted bounty hunter contracts and rerouted the credits to eliminate rivals before the jobs were posted. Slicers became ghost architects, building false realities for the Empire and clearing paths for their criminal masters. Brutality was never far from the surface. Black Sun understood that fear remained the most effective currency in lawless systems. When bribes failed, intimidation followed, and when intimidation failed, bodies followed. Resource raids became a signature tactic. Mining convoys were ambushed in deep space, their crews spaced or enslaved. Imperial depots were stripped under the cover of fake distress signals. Entire research stations vanished overnight, their personnel either recruited or killed. These operations were never random, they were surgical, targeting assets that would either cripple a competitor or provide leverage against an Imperial administrator. Shipjackings became a core part of Black Sun's economic strategy. The Syndicate maintained squads trained specifically to infiltrate, disable, and repurpose ships in flight. Using EMP bombs, hacked transponders, and false beacon codes, these crews would intercept freighters or corvettes mid-transit. Once boarded, the original crew was given a choice: join the Syndicate, or disappear. Reprogrammed navicomputers and repainted hulls disguised the stolen ships, which were either resold through shadow ports or added to Black Sun's expanding fleet. These hijacked vessels became the foundation for mobile smuggling operations, pirate flotillas, and covert strike teams. Despite their efficiency, the Syndicate faced constant pressure from the Empire's most secretive agencies. The Imperial Security Bureau, known for its cold precision and surveillance doctrine, identified Black Sun as a priority threat. ISB operatives began infiltrating suspected fronts, interrogating former allies and tracing financial irregularities. To counter this, Black Sun initiated a campaign of counterintelligence. Disinformation cells leaked false plans, frame-ups were orchestrated to point suspicion at rival groups like the Crimora or Zan Consortium, and entire operations were staged solely to draw ISB resources away from more valuable targets. The real danger came from Comnor, the Commission for the Preservation of the New Order. Driven by ideological purity and fanatical loyalty, Comnor viewed Black Sun not merely as criminals, but as a philosophical threat to imperial unity. Propaganda campaigns painted the Syndicate as corruptors of the youth, destroyers of order, and the hidden hand behind rebellion. On some worlds, Black Sun safehouses were raided not by stormtroopers, but by brainwashed citizen militias. Public executions became tools of deterrence. Still, for every cell exposed, 2 more emerged in the shadows. The Syndicate learned to move faster, burn identities sooner, and spread its core functions across multiple fronts. They became a ghost empire, always present, but never fully seen. There were losses. Some Vigos were captured or betrayed, front companies collapsed under audit, smuggling lanes were exposed and collapsed, but each defeat was met with reinvention. Black Sun never placed its entire weight in one place. Redundancy was its strength. A Vigo taken in the core worlds would be replaced by a counterpart in the outer rim. If an operation failed on one planet, another rose 3 systems away. The organization became an ecosystem, self-sustaining, decentralized, and fueled by desperation and ambition. Perhaps most dangerously, the Syndicate began to feed into the very mythos of the rebellion. Disillusioned Imperials, former Republic officers, and disenfranchised civilians were drawn into Black Sun's orbit not purely for crime, but for revenge and opportunity. The line between insurgent and criminal blurred. On worlds where the Empire failed to provide justice or stability, Black Sun did. They established black market hospitals, food distribution centers, and protection networks. For some, they were the only government that listened. And while these actions were calculated to grow influence, they carried a deeper risk. The creation of loyalty not just through fear or profit, but necessity. By the 10th year of imperial rule, Black Sun had survived assassination, betrayal, and the death of its most powerful leader. It had adapted to a galaxy ruled by tyranny, not by fighting it directly, but by weaving itself through its very bones. The Empire spoke of order. Black Sun dealt in chaos, then sold the illusion of control to both oppressor and oppressed. The underground war was not one of fleets or battalions, it was a war of perception, infiltration, and shadows. And in those shadows, Black Sun found not only survival, but power. Real, dangerous power that no fleet or decree could ever fully erase. While the Empire marched across stars and systems, the Syndicate moved beside it, cloaked in silence, invisible to all but those who knew where to look. Those who did rarely lived long enough to warn the others. Chapter 6: Rival Syndicates and Bloody Alliances. The galactic underworld, like the stars above it, was never still. It pulsed with change, with hunger, and with blood. Black Sun, though vast and entrenched, did not exist in isolation. Across the galaxy, other syndicates schemed and thrived, all vying for supremacy over the same territories, same trade routes, and same corridors of influence. While Black Sun preferred to operate with precision and control, others moved with brute force, religious zealotry, or chaotic ambition. The story of Black Sun during the reign of the Empire cannot be told without confronting its rivals. and the blood-soaked web of alliances, betrayals, and battles that shaped the criminal order of the galaxy. Of all the syndicates that crossed paths with Black Sun, few were as insidious as Crimson Dawn. At first, Crimson Dawn appeared to be a minor player. Operating under the radar, they moved with secrecy and restraint, conducting their business through trusted intermediaries and phantom networks. But behind that careful veil was a power unlike any Black Sun had ever encountered. Crimson Dawn was not merely a crime syndicate. It was a cult of manipulation, discipline, and fear, and at its core was Darth Maul, the former Sith who had once pulled Black Sun into his Shadow Collective by force. Following the fall of the Shadow Collective, Maul vanished from galactic view. Many believed him dead. Black Sun returned to its decentralized structure, licking its wounds and reforming its leadership. But Maul had not vanished. He had transformed. Crimson Dawn emerged in the vacuum left behind by the war, infiltrating marketplaces, courts, and criminal circles with the precision of a scalpel. By the time Black Sun became aware of the depth of the infiltration, it was already losing ground. Entire cells within the Syndicate had pledged quiet loyalty to Crimson Dawn. Middlemen disappeared. Convoys were rerouted or stolen. Informants gave false reports. Contracts collapsed without explanation. The infiltration was not merely strategic, it was psychological. Crimson Dawn offered its agents more than wealth. It offered purpose. In a galaxy consumed by imperial order, the Syndicate presented itself as a higher calling. Where Black Sun demanded loyalty through power and profit, Crimson Dawn offered something closer to faith. This ideological edge proved dangerous. Black Sun had dealt with rivals before, but never one that operated like a shadow religion. Efforts to root out Crimson Dawn sympathizers from within Black Sun ranks resulted in brutal purges. Dozens of trusted lieutenants were exposed. Regional Vigos vanished overnight, either assassinated or converted. In some cases, entire branches of Black Sun operations were found to have been operating under Crimson Dawn's direction for years. The war with Crimson Dawn never became open in the traditional sense. It was fought through assassinations, false deals, sabotage, and information warfare. Data slicers from both sides battled in cyberspace, corrupting shipments, scrambling codes, and exposing secret operations. Safe houses were bombed, captains were poisoned, couriers disappeared between jumps. Black Sun's response was swift and merciless. Those suspected of collusion were eliminated without trial. A new division of internal security was created solely to hunt Crimson Dawn agents, its agents trained in counter-espionage and dark interrogation methods. In time, the infiltration was slowed, but the damage had already been done. Crimson Dawn had proven that even Black Sun could be bled from within. The Hutt cartel presented a different kind of rivalry. Where Crimson Dawn operated like a religious cult, the Hutts were a bloated empire of indulgence and decadence. Their history stretched back centuries, their influence ingrained in the culture of the Outer Rim. The Hutts operated with pride and territorial arrogance, considering entire systems their birthright. Black Sun, in its efficiency and silence, was seen as an irritant, a threat to the Hutt model of control. The trade wars between Black Sun and the Hutt cartel were some of the bloodiest and most economically destructive confrontations in the Underworld's history. Spice was the catalyst. As demand for high-grade glitterstim and rill surged during the Imperial years, competition for production and distribution became fierce. Black Sun had secured refining stations in Kessel and distribution routes through the expansion region. The Hutts, unwilling to cede control, responded by enlisting Nikto enforcers and Weequay raiders to seize transport convoys. Entire freighters disappeared in the Rion cluster. Spice labs were bombed. Smugglers caught trafficking for Black Sun in Hutt space were flayed and displayed as warnings. Black Sun retaliated with calculated fury. Pirate captains and privateers were brought under contract. Using fast ships, cloaked jump routes, and insider intelligence, they struck at Hutt convoys with surgical precision. Instead of taking territory, they targeted infrastructure. Refineries were disabled. Storage caches were emptied. Black Sun slicers infiltrated Hutt ledgers and rerouted tax payments to untraceable accounts. The Hutts, with their reliance on hierarchy and legacy, were slower to adapt. Their pride blinded them to the changing battlefield. Over time, the cartel's grip on the spice routes weakened. Smaller Hutt clans broke away and aligned with Black Sun in secret, preferring stable profits over ceremonial oaths to an outdated order. In some cases, the conflict exploded into open warfare. The Battle of Nalhutta's Third Moon, a skirmish erased from official records, saw hundreds dead as Black Sun strike teams invaded a Hutt-controlled spaceport to retrieve a stolen shipment of prototype droid components. The operation lasted less than 2 hours. The spaceport was obliterated. No prisoners were taken. From that moment forward, the Hutts negotiated more carefully. While peace was never declared, a cold truce settled between the two powers. Borders were redrawn in silence, each side aware that further escalation could threaten their already fragile coexistence with the Empire. The Pike Syndicate, longtime partners and competitors, occupied a more complex relationship with Black Sun. Their mastery over spice production on Kessel remained unmatched, and for decades they controlled the flow of raw product into the hands of distributors. Black Sun had relied on the Pikes in the past, but their mutual dependence bred resentment. The Pikes, insular and paranoid, refused to allow Black Sun any direct control over refining operations. In response, Black Sun sought to develop its own alternative sources. Terraforming experiments on remote moons, infiltration of lesser-known spice veins on Ryloth, and blackmail of Pike engineers became regular practice. Tensions flared when a joint operation in the Kessel system collapsed. A convoy of spice escorted by Pike guards and Black Sun smugglers was ambushed. Each side blamed the other. The resulting fallout triggered a spiral of violence. Laboratories were bombed, technicians were kidnapped, data cores were stolen. The Pikes responded with uncharacteristic aggression, assassinating a Vigo on Korulag with a neurotoxin laced into his favorite vintage. Black Sun retaliated by planting explosives in a Pike embassy on Naboo, a move so audacious it was blamed on Separatist loyalists. Eventually, a truce was brokered through intermediaries. Each side retained its core operations, but shared profits from overlapping routes. The agreement remained fragile. At the slightest provocation, the violence resumed. Despite this, the necessity of mutual profit kept them from full-scale war. The Pikes understood that without Black Sun's distribution network, their product would rot in bunkers. Black Sun knew that attempting to replace the Pikes outright would be suicidal. The peace that existed between them was one born of recognition, not trust. Among the lesser-known but increasingly dangerous players was the Zan Consortium. Led by the charismatic and unpredictable Tiber Zan, the consortium operated with a reckless energy that unnerved more established syndicates. Zan's strategy was based on chaos and aggression. He raided Black Sun installations, hijacked communication relays, and publicly mocked syndicate policies. Unlike the Hutts or Pikes, the Zan Consortium did not seek negotiation. They wanted disruption. Tiber Zan believed that the galaxy belonged to those who could take what they wanted when they wanted it. Black Sun responded to Zan's provocations with a mixture of suppression and sabotage. While the consortium never posed a systemic threat to the syndicate's core operations, its unpredictability created complications. Convoy routes were changed, informants reassigned, security protocols upgraded. Zan's raids forced Black Sun to adapt more quickly than it preferred. In some instances, Black Sun dispatched hunter-killer teams to track and eliminate Zan cells, treating them as rogue elements rather than organized opposition. Despite the chaos, Black Sun learned from these encounters. It became more flexible, more responsive, and more ruthless. The lessons of dealing with Zan fed into training for new operatives. Contingency plans were developed for every rival, and while Zan himself evaded capture, many of his lieutenants did not. Their knowledge was extracted, their techniques studied, and their corpses quietly disposed of. Throughout all these conflicts, the ghost of Darth Maul lingered. Though Crimson Dawn was believed dismantled after his fall, remnants remained. Weapons caches bearing his insignia turned up in Black Sun raids. Former Shadow Collective officers appeared in opposition. Some whispered that Maul still lived, directing movements from the shadows, waiting for his chance to return. For Black Sun, the threat of Maul was never gone. His legacy served as a constant reminder that the line between ally and enemy in the underworld was thin, and that the price of complacency was always death. Black Sun did not emerge from these rivalries unscathed. Territory was lost, resources were drained, trust was eroded, but the Syndicate endured. It absorbed, adapted, and retaliated. Rivals were either pushed into the margins or absorbed into its expanding structure. Privateer fleets once independent were brought under contract. Pirate kings were dethroned or recruited. The underworld was not a battlefield with victors and losers. It was a living map of blood and credit, always changing, and Black Sun, despite everything, remained at its center. By the height of the Empire's reign, Black Sun stood as the most influential syndicate in the galaxy, not because it crushed every rival, but because it outlasted them. It mastered the art of alliance and the necessity of betrayal. It understood that in a galaxy ruled by fear and ambition, survival was not about strength alone, but about knowing when to strike, when to yield, and when to let others bleed in your place. Chapter 7. Secrets of Profit and Power. At the heart of the galaxy's most feared syndicate lies a single unchanging truth. Black Sun does not exist to rule, to conquer, or to inspire. It exists to profit. Every raid, assassination, and alliance, every betrayal and infiltration is a means to one end: wealth. The kind of wealth that does not sit idly in vaults or data ledgers, but flows through the veins of star systems, shaping destinies and toppling regimes. Black Sun has no singular product, no fixed territory. What it controls is opportunity, and it monetizes everything it touches. The Syndicate's power structure relies heavily on a labyrinthine network of front companies. These businesses operate in full view of the public, with licenses, employees, corporate branding, and pristine records. To the average galactic citizen, they appear legitimate, but behind the clean facades of shipping firms, hospitality chains, and agricultural cooperatives lies a machinery of fraud and laundering. A weapons testing facility on Ord Mantell reports income from research grants, while smuggling repurposed arms through false cargo containers. A chain of luxury resorts in the Inner Rim serves as a hub for bribes, discreet meetings, and the movement of stolen identities. Every legitimate business tied to Black Sun is designed to conceal illegal capital, cycle it through economic filters, and return it clean. Money laundering begins at the source. Illegal income from spice, arms, or trafficking is funneled through shell corporations registered in systems with minimal financial oversight. These corporations conduct fake transactions with partner firms, inflating invoices, forging service agreements, or listing phantom employees. By the time the funds return to Black Sun's central operations, they appear as revenue from consulting fees, logistics contracts, or entertainment licensing. Regulators, overwhelmed and often underpaid, are either unable or unwilling to investigate. When audits are ordered, the evidence has already been wiped or rerouted to implicate rival companies. In recent decades, Black Sun has also turned its attention to the intergalactic banking system. Rather than rely solely on laundering, the Syndicate infiltrated financial institutions themselves. Through a combination of bribery, blackmail, and data slicing, they placed operatives inside major banks from Cato Neimoidia to Coruscant. These agents alter credit records, erase debt, fabricate asset holdings, and manipulate interest flow. One of the most profitable schemes involved falsifying planetary bond values, allowing Black Sun to destabilize economies, buy up devalued property, and resell it at inflated prices after manufacturing artificial recovery. Whole governments, unaware of the manipulation, borrowed money at terms dictated by syndicate-controlled lenders. The slave markets remain a cornerstone of Black Sun's income even as galactic society turns an increasingly critical eye toward the practice. Unlike the overt flesh auctions of the Hutt cartel, Black Sun's operations are veiled behind corporate jargon and false legality. Labor procurement firms promise workforce solutions to mining colonies and frontier settlements. These workers are selected from refugee camps, captured in covert raids, or purchased from third-party suppliers. Identity records are forged, birthplaces are fabricated. All documentation is digitally sealed with authentic signatures acquired through slicer intervention. Black Sun's control of the market is not just logistical but psychological. Victims are conditioned through drugs, isolation, and subtle mental reprogramming to reduce resistance and ensure compliance. Some are embedded in construction crews, others serve as household aides, and many are sold into off-world brothels. A network of mobile processing ships, disguised as medical or quarantine vessels, keeps the supply line moving. By keeping the operations mobile and adaptable, Black Sun avoids detection while ensuring that its markets never run dry. Planetary governments that resist are undermined through bribery or destabilization campaigns. In extreme cases, assassins eliminate whistleblowers or justice ministers attempting to uncover the truth. Prostitution rings operate with similar obfuscation. Entertainment guilds, escort services, and wellness centers dot the galaxy. Many of them franchise through conglomerates secretly owned by Black Sun. These facilities offer luxury, privacy, and security. But behind the glamour lies coercion. Workers are contracted under deceptive agreements or indentured through falsified debts. While some enter the industry willingly, many do not. To clients, discretion is guaranteed. HoloNet feeds are scrambled, biometric data is erased post-visit, and even payment is conducted through temporary encrypted credits. When disputes arise, they are resolved swiftly and without legal intervention. Gambling dens provide a more visible stream of income. Black Sun controls hundreds of venues ranging from underground sabak rings in backwater cantinas to sprawling casinos in core world cities. Games are often rigged, though not blatantly. Subtle algorithm manipulation ensures a consistent house advantage. High-profile clients are enticed with lavish rewards, only to find themselves trapped in cycles of debt that are later leveraged for political favors or business access. Some clients are blackmailed using surveillance footage. Others are offered loan extensions that come with syndicate entanglements. The casino becomes more than entertainment. It becomes a recruitment ground, an intelligence hub, and a profit machine all in one. Weapon design and technological theft represent another lucrative avenue. As the Empire invested heavily in military research, Black Sun responded with its own network of spies, engineers, and scavengers. Stolen blueprints, intercepted shipments, and corrupted droid manufacturers allowed the Syndicate to reverse engineer and replicate high-demand tech. These weapons were sold to rebel cells, planetary militias, and private security firms unable to acquire Imperial contracts. Some items were experimental, others black market versions of regulated tech. Modular blasters, stealth field generators, and encrypted comm systems became staple offerings. Manufacturing facilities were hidden deep in asteroid fields, beneath the surface of airless moons or within abandoned Separatist factories. Components were smuggled piece by piece and assembled in rotating locations to prevent detection. Quality control was rigorous, enforced by former Imperial officers now on Black Sun payrolls. Clients received not only the weaponry but full service packages, including fake documentation, training protocols, and on-demand tech support. The Syndicate's black market arms division grew so efficient that entire warbands were formed and supplied within weeks, sparking insurgencies across contested territories. Slicers were the glue holding these operations together. These digital ghosts infiltrated everything. They bypassed banking firewalls, altered planetary registries, created new identities, and sabotaged rival syndicates. The best slicers operated in teams known only by code names, their locations unknown even to their employers. Using adaptive AI, quantum decryption tools, and constantly shifting encryption protocols, they could render an entire government blind within hours. Some were used offensively to dismantle a competitor's supply chain. Others worked defensively, protecting Black Sun's networks from detection or rerouting investigators into false leads. Information brokers operated in tandem with the slicers. These individuals moved through the galaxy collecting secrets, contacts, and favors. They worked as servants in royal courts, as traders in spaceports, or as clerks in imperial offices. Every tidbit was logged, cross-referenced, and sold. A single line of communication between two politicians could be worth a small fortune if it influenced a trade route or destabilized a rival's investment. Black Sun paid well for actionable intelligence and maintained a marketplace where informants could bid their wares for access, protection, or credits. In many ways, the Syndicate became a mirror of the Empire's own intelligence networks, more agile and far less constrained. Mercenary forces tied all of this together. While Black Sun avoided maintaining large standing armies, it employed thousands of freelance operatives, bounty hunters, ex-military specialists, former Jedi, and even droid squads were contracted for missions ranging from simple escorts to assassinations and full-scale facility raids. Each mercenary was vetted, equipped, and briefed by Syndicate handlers. Failure was rarely tolerated. Success was rewarded, with continued work, access to exclusive tech, and sanctuary in Black Sun-controlled territories. Mercenaries were often pitted against each other to test loyalty or eliminate weak links. In some cases, missions were double-layered with conflicting objectives. This ensured that only the most capable survived. Black Sun's approach to employment was clinical and brutal. The Syndicate did not seek idealism or loyalty, only results. And for those who delivered, the galaxy became a place of opportunity and privilege. For those who failed or betrayed, it became very small very quickly. In the end, Black Sun's true genius lay not in any single operation, but in its synthesis of all things criminal into a coherent, fluid, and adaptive machine. It thrived because it understood the nature of power, not just brute strength or wealth, but the quiet influence of a forged signature, the pressure of a whispered threat, the leverage of a carefully timed bribe. Every credit that passed through Black Sun's accounts carried weight, every secret traded held potential, and every operation, whether hidden in the bowels of a core world metropolis or buried deep within the sands of a forgotten moon, contributed to an empire of crime that no starship, no decree, and no lightsaber could truly erase. While the galaxy looked to thrones and battlefields, Black Sun focused on the spaces in between. In those spaces, it found everything it needed to profit, and in profit, it found permanence. Chapter 8: The Rebellion and Beyond. As the Galactic Empire's grip began to falter under the growing strain of rebellion, and whispers of dissent spread from dusty backwater settlements to the opulent towers of core world bureaucracies, Black Sun sensed an inevitable shift. Power, once concentrated in the iron grasp of the Emperor and his enforcer, was beginning to slip into chaos. The rebellion was not just a movement of hope or freedom. To Black Sun, it was a market, a new and volatile frontier of desperation, opportunity, and shifting alliances. In the chaos of revolution, there was profit to be made, and Black Sun, with centuries of survival etched into its operations, moved quickly to exploit it. Black Sun never officially aligned with the Rebel Alliance. It would have been antithetical to their creed. Ideology was a costume, a useful tool to manipulate the desperate or the naive. But arms still needed to be moved, fleets needed fuel, bases needed equipment. As the rebellion's numbers grew, so too did its appetite for logistics. And where the legitimate economy failed, the underworld filled the void. Black Sun weapons found their way into rebel hands through a web of cutouts, intermediaries, and plausible deniability. Modified E-11 blaster rifles, retrofitted Y-wings, shield generators of Imperial design, and encrypted comm systems quietly sourced from former Separatist caches, all bore the fingerprints of Black Sun's procurement divisions. Some weapons were paid for in credits, others were exchanged for favors, access, or leverage. Rebel commanders in remote sectors occasionally made deals with Syndicate contacts, trading cargo space or intel in exchange for badly needed supplies. While Mon Mothma and the Alliance High Command publicly decried any association with criminal organizations, on the fringes of war, survival often trumped ethics. There were rebel officers who turned a blind eye. Some took bribes. A few became fully complicit, coordinating secret shipments, staging false flag raids to justify supply drops, or allowing Black Sun convoys to pass unchallenged. These officers, while few, allowed the Syndicate to entrench itself within the cracks of the rebel logistical network. Black Sun also recognized the strategic value of information during the war. Sicers embedded within Imperial systems sold troves of data to the rebellion, including troop movements, fuel depot locations, and weaknesses in planetary shields. The Alliance was careful about the sources, but desperation eroded caution. In many instances, they believed the data came from sympathetic informants or rogue Imperial officers. In truth, it often came with a silent price tag. Black Sun sold secrets to both sides, ensuring that no matter who claimed victory, the Syndicate had currency with the future rulers. After the Battle of Endor and the death of Emperor Palpatine, the galaxy plunged into disarray. The Empire fractured into warlord fiefdoms, and the New Republic scrambled to seize control. For Black Sun, this was not a moment of crisis, but of renaissance. With Xizor dead and his central authority dissolved, the Syndicate had already evolved into a loose federation of regional powers. Each Vigo commanded their own domains, with varying degrees of autonomy. The collapse of Imperial oversight allowed these regional leaders to act with unprecedented boldness. Entire star systems that once operated in secret now became openly managed by Black Sun governors under different names. Political infiltration became a priority. The New Republic, formed from a coalition of idealists, former senators, and freedom fighters, was rife with internal conflict. Black Sun operatives exploited this confusion by embedding themselves into the new administrative systems. Planetary officials were bribed or replaced. Senate aides, infrastructure consultants, and trade regulators quietly altered permits and funding allocations to favor Syndicate holdings. Front companies registered under Republic reconstruction programs began to receive contracts. In some cases, these firms provided real services. In others, they funneled resources into Black Sun operations, often unnoticed until entire budgets had vanished into ghost accounts. Mon Mothma, now Chancellor of the New Republic, launched a series of investigations and suppression campaigns to root out criminal influence in the young government. She ordered the dissolution of dozens of contracts, exposed several shell companies, and publicly condemned any alliances with syndicates. Intelligence divisions under her command began tracking known operatives, launching covert raids, and seizing assets. In response, Black Sun adjusted. Operations became more insulated, slicers enhanced their firewalls, and couriers were trained in counter-surveillance and memory suppression. Informants inside the New Republic were given stricter compartmentalization orders, ensuring that no single betrayal could collapse an entire branch. Mothma's campaign achieved limited results. While some cells were dismantled, the core syndicate continued to operate. Black Sun did not rely on centralized control. Its adaptability ensured survival. Where suppression grew intense, the syndicate simply shifted focus to less visible sectors, allowing legitimate firms to serve as proxies, while criminal activities were relocated to new systems. In some cases, Black Sun even assisted in the suppression of rival syndicates, offering intelligence or aid in exchange for silence or legal leniency. The fall of the Empire also unshackled the syndicate from old rivalries. With the Hutts struggling to maintain cohesion after the death of Java and Crimson Dawn all but collapsed following Maul's demise, Black Sun found itself uncontested in several key regions. Territories once hotly contested were absorbed by regional warlords loyal to the syndicate. These warlords were not bound by council or hierarchy. They ruled through fear, charisma, and economic necessity. Systems under their control operated with grim efficiency. Crime was not a secret, but a reality. Taxes were replaced by protection fees. Justice was meted out through syndicate tribunals, Markets flourished and populations, worn down by war, accepted stability in whatever form it came. Some of these warlords styled themselves as legitimate rulers. On Denon, a former Vigo named Naro Vel established a corporate police state under the pretense of reconstruction. His rule combined brutal enforcement with visible infrastructure investment. Schools, power grids, and medical facilities were built, alongside spice refineries and encrypted communication hubs. He employed former rebel soldiers as security officers and invited New Republic inspectors on scheduled tours, ensuring that any true criminal activity was always one room out of sight. Other warlords took a different approach. On Selenon, the warlord Ilurgan operated entirely in the shadows, running vast trafficking operations through undercity transit hubs. Her influence was maintained through blackmail and assassination, with no formal structure or declared leadership. She paid tribute to no one, yet her operations funneled millions of credits back into the Syndicate. The rise of such leaders blurred the distinction between independent actors and Black Sun Command. While many acted autonomously, they all funneled resources and loyalty into the greater network. The Syndicate became less a singular organization and more a collective of power brokers bound by shared history, shared interests, and mutual dependence. Weapons continued to flow into conflict zones. As the New Republic struggled to bring order to distant systems, Black Sun sold arms to planetary defense militias, pirate groups, and even former Imperial holdouts. In some cases, they armed both sides of the same conflict, ensuring that demand never ceased. Their clients no longer wore uniforms of empires or rebellions, but carried flags of desperation, vengeance, or profit. Black Sun did not ask questions, it merely calculated margin. Information remained the Syndicate's most valuable asset. With so many factions vying for influence, Black Sun's data brokers found themselves inundated with buyers. Political scandal, troop deployments, trade routes, and secret meetings were all auctioned to the highest bidder. Encryption systems once exclusive to Imperial intelligence were now in Syndicate hands. Black Sun offered information assurance packages to planetary governments where, for a monthly fee, systems would be protected from Slacer attacks. What clients did not know was that the Syndicate often created the threat in the first place, ensuring perpetual demand for their own solution. Perhaps most disturbingly, Black Sun began to experiment with legal legitimacy. With the New Republic emphasizing democratic rebuilding, many former operatives simply ran for office. Backed by Syndicate funds, they campaigned as independent voices for recovery, anti-corporate reformers, or war heroes. Some were genuinely popular, their dark pasts obscured or buried beneath good deeds and manufactured records. Once in office, they guided funding to Syndicate-friendly contracts, ensured investigations stalled, and appointed loyalists to regulatory posts. Black Sun no longer needed to bribe senators when it could elect them. The rebellion had sought to free the galaxy from tyranny, and in many ways it succeeded. But in the vacuum left by the Empire's fall, new forms of tyranny emerged. Some wore uniforms, others wore suits, and some, like Black Sun, wore no visible insignia at all. They moved behind the scenes, pulling strings, feeding conflict, and harvesting profit from the confusion. Black Sun was never a static force. It changed with the times, adapted to new threats, and rewrote its own rules as needed. During the rebellion, it supplied weapons to freedom fighters and sold them out to bounty hunters. It bribed Imperials and funded saboteurs. It embedded itself in the New Republic while destabilizing its rivals. In every act, there was one consistent principle. The flow of credits must never stop, and it didn't. From the ashes of Empire to the stumbling birth of the Republic, Black Sun remained the quiet power behind the curtain. It did not command fleets, it did not control legions, but it understood the truth of power. Power was influence. Power was knowledge. Power was the ability to choose who lived, who died, and who disappeared. And so long as someone needed a weapon, a secret, or a lie, Black Sun would be there, silent, watching, and ready to make a deal. Chapter 9: Death, Rebirth, and the Crimson Era. The death of Prince Xizor was supposed to be the end. When his palace on Coruscant was reduced to rubble by Darth Vader's silent wrath, when the Vigo Council was left fractured and rudderless, and when the Empire made clear that it would no longer tolerate even the illusion of rival power, most believed Black Sun had met its final fate. For a time, they were right. The Syndicate fell into disarray. Regional Vigos turned on one another. Loyal lieutenants were assassinated or defected. Safe houses were exposed. Entire sectors that once operated with ruthless precision fell into chaos. Credits dried up. Smugglers turned freelance. Enforcers vanished into exile or were executed in purges ordered by frightened warlords, scrambling to distance themselves from the fallen empire of crime. And yet, Black Sun did not die. It retreated. It regrouped. And slowly, in the shadows of the Clone Wars and the rise of the Empire, it began to reform under new leadership. These new Vigos were not cut from Xizor's cloth. They did not seek elegance or centralization. They were warlords, opportunists, survivors of the galactic underworld who saw in the name of Black Sun a symbol that still carried weight. Under their guidance, the Syndicate was rebuilt as a federation of cells. Each Vigo commanded their territory like a sovereign state, loosely connected by shared resources, old loyalties, and the mutual recognition that unity, however fragile, offered better protection than isolation. During the Clone Wars, Black Sun re-emerged in full view of the galactic stage. In the animated records of that era, its symbol returned with a new generation of faces. Darth Maul, once thought dead and buried, had survived. Twisted and broken but alive, rebuilding himself through rage and the dark side, Maul resurfaced with a vision. He would create a new order, not through open war, but through dominion over chaos. To achieve that vision, he needed the Syndicates. He needed Black Sun. When Mao formed the Shadow Collective, he approached Black Sun not with diplomacy, but with demonstration. On Mustafar, he executed a Vigo in front of the others as a lesson in loyalty. The remaining Vigos, recognizing both the danger of refusal and the potential of alliance, joined his cause. Under Mao, Black Sun joined forces with the Pike Syndicate, the Hutt Cartel, and Death Watch. It was the largest criminal unification in known history, and for a time, it worked. Resources flowed, targets were eliminated, and Mao's vision gained traction in the chaos of war. But unity under fear could not last. The Shadow Collective fractured as quickly as it formed. When the Republic finally brought the war to Mandalore and Maul's forces scattered, Black Sun retreated into its own chaos. Some Vigos remained loyal to Maul. Others saw an opportunity to reclaim independence. The collective shattered, and the Syndicate split yet again. But the name Black Sun remained. The resources remained. The networks, fractured but intact, began to regrow. Years later, in the Age of Rebellion, Black Sun would appear again, this time in the records of Imperial intelligence. It was still a name whispered in smuggler circles, still a symbol of dread on pirate banners. In the animated chronicles of Star Wars Rebels, the name surfaced in connection with smuggling operations and arms dealing. Cells based on Mustafar and Ord Mantell were tracked conducting high-level spice trades and arranging shipments of modified starfighters. Their resurgence was not in the form of a singular empire, but as a decentralized shadow that stretched across the stars. No longer seeking open dominance, the Syndicate had learned the value of invisibility. During this time, another force rose from the underworld, casting long crimson shadows across Black Sun's interests. Crimson Dawn. Restructured and revitalized after Maul's fall by a mysterious figure named Kira, began asserting dominance over key criminal markets. Kira, a survivor forged in the fire of Corellia's slums and trained under Maul's own hand, had taken the remnants of the Shadow Collective and reshaped them into something even more precise. Where Mao ruled through fear and the Force, Kira ruled through intelligence, manipulation, and adaptability. Crimson Dawn targeted Black Sun's operations with surgical precision. Convoys disappeared, supply chains were rerouted. Smugglers once loyal to the Syndicate began taking contracts from Kira's agents. It was not an open war, it was a quiet usurpation, carried out through economic pressure, propaganda, and selective sabotage. On Corellia, Crimson Dawn bribed port officials to block Black Sun's shipments. In Mon Cala, Black Sun's safe houses were raided days after being compromised by paid informants. The Syndicate responded in kind, attempting to assassinate key Crimson Dawn lieutenants and bribing slicers to sabotage Kira's communications network. What followed was a quiet shadow war, not fought with armies or fleets, but with bounty hunters, slicers, and mercenary forces. On the outer moons of Yelasia, Black Sun agents clashed with Crimson Dawn enforcers over control of spice fields. On Ryloth, former slaves now working for Kira's network attacked Black Sun refineries with insider knowledge. Bounty hunters were deployed in waves. Some worked both sides, some switched sides mid-contract. The Underworld was in flux, and the Syndicate, despite its history, found itself playing catch-up against a new breed of criminal empire. The bounty hunter networks became essential. With formal military strength limited, both Black Sun and Crimson Dawn leaned heavily on freelance operatives to enact high-risk missions. Black Sun recruited some of the deadliest names in the trade, offering specialized gear, intel support, and substantial bounties for sabotage, theft, and assassination. Some of these hunters were former Imperial specialists, others were Force users who had abandoned the Order or fled the Inquisition. Rogue Jedi, trained in the arts of stealth and persuasion, found new purpose under Black Sun contracts. They operated in silence, targeting Crimson Dawn ships, hacking security grids, and occasionally infiltrating negotiations to eliminate Kira's envoys. The modern Black Sun took shape during this volatile period. No longer unified under a central Vigo council, the Syndicate adopted a cell-based structure that allowed rapid deployment and compartmentalized damage. Regional Vigos operated semi-independently, communicating through dead drops, encrypted transmissions, or trusted couriers. Mustafa remained a stronghold, its volcanic forge repurposed into a clandestine arms facility. Ord Mantell became a hub for bounty hunter staging, with secret barracks and credit laundries buried beneath the junk fields. Corellia, long contested, was home to the most active intelligence operations, where agents embedded in shipyards, customs departments, and planetary patrols funneled information to Black Sun's central core. On Mon Cala, the Syndicate established deep-sea laboratories hidden beneath ancient ruins. Here, experimental drugs, bioenhancements, and neural suppression devices were developed, often tested on unwilling captives captured from rival groups or rogue smugglers. The facility remained undiscovered thanks to the cooperation of a corrupt Mon Calamari noble, himself a failed senator whose resentment toward the New Republic made him amenable to Black Sun's promises of wealth and restored dignity. The Syndicate also adapted its business model. While spice remained a core product, Black Sun expanded into cybertech trafficking, droid smuggling, and even artificial intelligence black markets. In the age of rapid expansion and technological proliferation, the demand for restricted tech grew exponentially. Black Sun positioned itself as the silent supplier of banned droid personalities, untraceable slicer implants, and prototype stealth field gear. Their tech market operated out of hidden data vaults, accessible only through rotating encryption keys and physical handoff sequences. Clients ranged from rogue Jedi to pirate captains, and even New Republic defectors who sought advantages in regional conflicts. The Syndicate's influence was not limited to crime. Black Sun began funding insurgencies not for political reasons, but to create controlled instability. On planets where rival syndicates gained footholds, Black Sun would supply opposition groups with arms and credits, allowing internal conflict to weaken the local infrastructure. Once the region collapsed into chaos, Black Sun would move in as the stabilizing force, offering reconstruction contracts, protection services, and logistical support. It was an old strategy, reborn for a new age. Profit through controlled chaos, power through restoration. In the wider galaxy, Black Sun's name no longer struck the same singular dread it had under Xizor. It had become part of the criminal landscape, respected but no longer untouchable. Yet in many ways this anonymity offered protection. With the Empire shattered and the new Republic overextended, there were fewer resources available to enforce law beyond the core. Black Sun used this to its advantage. It became the reliable alternative. When governments failed to deliver medicine, Black Sun supplied it. When local systems lost control over shipping lanes, Black Sun patrolled them. When warlords enslaved villages, Black Sun offered contracts for their removal, always at a cost, always with conditions. Kira's Crimson Dawn eventually fractured under its own weight. Her vision, while formidable, relied on secrecy and idealism. Black Sun was older, colder, and less burdened by principle. As Crimson Dawn faded from prominence, its assets were absorbed. Some former lieutenants were recruited, others were silenced. Their knowledge was valuable, but their loyalty suspect. Black Sun harvested what it could and burned the rest. By the time the new Republic entered its second decade, Black Sun had returned not as a unified empire, but as a decentralized force with influence in nearly every sector. Its operations were leaner, its leadership more cautious, and its goals purely financial. It no longer sought the spotlight. It sought access, influence, and untouchable profit. It had endured Jedi purges, imperial domination, rebellion, and rival syndicates. It had changed faces, changed leaders, changed methods, but it had never disappeared. In the age that followed, amid shifting governments and resurgent threats, Black Sun endured. And in the dark places of the galaxy, in the forgotten corners where laws had no teeth and credits were stronger than promises, it still ruled. Quietly, efficiently, permanently. Chapter 10. Legacy of the Underworld. In the long and winding history of the galaxy, many great empires have risen and fallen, leaving behind statues, ruins, or data-choked records that attempt to shape memory into truth. But some powers have never needed monuments. They leave their mark not in stone or law, but in silence, in shadow, and in the behavior of those who remain. Black Sun, the most enduring criminal syndicate in known galactic history, belongs to that second kind. It has no capital city, no anthem, no holiday, and yet its legacy is deeply embedded in the fabric of the underworld and in the fears and calculations of politicians, smugglers, bounty hunters, and warlords across every known sector. Black Sun influenced more than just commerce and crime. It shaped the very rules by which the underworld operates. Before its ascension, syndicates often relied on brute force, intimidation, or short-term scams to maintain their footholds. Black Sun introduced infrastructure. It introduced intelligence, strategic decentralization, and the use of legitimate fronts as shields against prosecution. In doing so, it created a model that others would imitate. Its success was never due to sheer firepower alone, but to the belief that with the right leverage, any door could open, any official could be bought, any rival could be turned into a partner or a corpse. Bounty hunter guilds owe much of their modern structure to the influence of Black Sun. During the syndicate's height, it standardized the way contracts were issued, enforced, and closed. Bounties issued through Black Sun terminals were backed by verifiable credit reserves, biometric tracking, and non-negotiable clauses. Operatives knew that accepting a Black Sun contract came with guarantees of payment and consequences for failure. Even the infamous Bounty Hunters Guild later adopted similar protocols. Some of the galaxy's most notorious hunters, including those who worked with the Empire or the New Republic, began their careers with syndicate contracts. Others continued working under Black Sun's direction long after the collapse of galactic governments, seeing in the syndicate a consistency and clarity that regimes lack. Planetary crime laws in the Outer Rim and Mid-Rim sectors bear the fingerprints of Black Sun influence. In some cases, governors under syndicate payroll rewrote legislation to redefine what constituted illegal trade, often exempting the very operations they were paid to protect. In other systems, The threat of Black Sun retaliation caused lawmakers to draft vague or intentionally unenforceable regulations, allowing smugglers and syndicate enforcers to operate with near impunity. Even in the core, whispers of Black Sun's hand-guided policy decisions, often in the form of trade exceptions or unexpected pardons. Culturally, Black Sun became more than just a syndicate. It became a symbol. Its starburst sigil, stylized in various forms over time, appeared in street art, underworld tattoos, and black market merchandise. On some worlds, to wear the sigil was to invite death. On others, it was seen as a mark of power or survival. In certain criminal circles, it was considered a rite of passage to steal something from a Black Sun convoy and live to tell about it. Holodramas dramatized the syndicate's inner workings, often romanticizing or demonizing its leaders. While these portrayals rarely captured the cold reality of syndicate life, they helped elevate Black Sun to mythic status. Alongside the iconography grew the legends. Tales of lost treasure fleets, hidden safe houses, and assassination teams that could bypass any security became staples in smuggler cantinas and bounty hunter camps. One popular myth tells of a Black Sun vault ship, the Voru's Gambit, said to have vanished into a collapsing hyperspace lane with a cargo of precious kyber crystals, antique Sith relics, and a backup server holding the identities of every major informant in the core world. Supposed sightings of the ship have circulated for decades, though none have been confirmed. Another legend speaks of a Vigo-trained assassin known only as Ghost, who allegedly completed over 100 political killings without ever being seen or identified. Whether such stories are based in truth or spun from the imaginations of weary travelers, they reflect the deep impression the Syndicate has left on the galactic psyche. Rumors continue to persist that Black Sun never truly vanished, even in regions where its presence seems absent. In the unknown regions, long considered uncharted and dangerous, stories abound of Black Sun operatives striking deals with lost colonies, ancient species, and rogue military units from the old wars. Some claim the Syndicate has found a foothold in these forgotten territories, building an empire beyond the reach of any Republic, Empire, or First Order. These rumors are impossible to confirm, but they remain persistent, kept alive by fragmented transmissions, abandoned databanks, and the occasional survivor who claims to have seen Syndicate banners waving in places where no law has ever held sway. Compared to other major underworld powers, Black Sun's legacy stands apart. The Hutt cartel, for all its age and reach, was deeply tied to the idiosyncrasies of its species. It was bound by tradition, honor among thieves, and the pride of the clans. When Jabba died and the cartels fractured, their influence declined sharply, and many of their practices became obsolete. Crimson Dawn, in contrast, was a product of one man's ambition and a woman's tenacity. Its rise under Maul and resurgence under Kira were meteoric, but ultimately short-lived. It relied too heavily on secrecy, ideology, and charisma. When leadership faltered, its structure crumbled. Black Sun endured because it was never about a single leader or system. It was an organism that adapted to its environment. It could survive decapitation, betrayal, even exposure. It reinvented itself after Xizor. It fractured and reformed after Maul. It operated through proxies, reinvented its markets, and embedded itself in every emerging system. While others rose and fell like empires, Black Sun survived like a virus, mutating, hiding, and returning stronger. The Syndicate's influence also extended to social dynamics within the underworld. It helped formalize the distinction between freelance crime and organized crime. Where once pirates, spice dealers, and slavers acted as independent actors, Black Sun brought coordination and standards. It created a culture where cooperation was more profitable than chaos, where long-term control was favored over quick and bloody victories. It established codes of conduct, territories of influence, and neutral ground policies that reduced unnecessary conflict and allowed for expansion. These standards influenced other syndicates and even guided the formation of post-war crime pacts in areas abandoned by central governments. Black Sun's impact on individual lives is difficult to quantify but impossible to ignore. It created generations of loyal operatives who knew no other form of life. Children raised in syndicate schools learned languages, encryption, hand-to-hand combat, and the value of silence. Entire communities depended on Black Sun for stability, protection, and employment, especially on fringe worlds where legitimate aid never arrived. For some, the Syndicate was a shield. For others, it was a chain. But for all, it was inescapable. Even now, with new powers rising in the galaxy and new wars brewing, whispers of Black Sun persist. Its methods live on in emergent criminal groups. Its iconography resurfaces in stylized rebellion logos, and its philosophies are studied by both crime lords and security strategists. Some argue that Black Sun as a brand has faded, that it has splintered too far to ever return. Others suggest the opposite, that what appears fragmented is merely decentralized by design, and that the Syndicate now operates with greater reach and less visibility than ever before. In the end, Black Sun's legacy is not just one of crime, it is one of transformation. It changed how the galaxy viewed power without legitimacy, control without recognition, and profit without borders. It proved that institutions need not be public to be influential, and that in the right hands, even darkness can be a foundation. Its symbol, the burning sunburst, is more than a brand. It is a warning that even in the brightest times there are always shadows. And in those shadows something ancient, cunning, and patient waits, watching, calculating, ready to rise again. Black Sun was never meant to be understood through heroism or ideology. It was always meant to be survived, and in that it succeeded beyond measure.